In an appearance on the Canadiens Connection podcast, Leafs insider Michael Trakos reveals the insane asking price that the Toronto Maple Leafs have for William Nylander if the Habs were to trade for him. We'll be getting into that, plus the Habs' biggest bargain contracts heading into this year, and also a Brendan Gallagher trade might be coming sooner than you think, so you'll want to stick around for this edition of Habs Digest. And as we get into this Brendan Gallagher news, a quick reminder, if you're one of the thousands of people who hasn't subscribed, hit subscribe now. I know I say it every video, but thank you very much. But is this possible? Could Brendan Gallagher be traded? I mean, look, as Habs fans, we all know Brendan Gallagher has contributed so much to this team over the years, and he's been the heart and soul, and when healthy, he's been producing pretty well. I mean, this past season in games where he didn't have a nagging injury, he was actually quite good, but in a recent article, looking at his contract and looking at some of the contract situations, not so great situations the Habs have, they mentioned that at $6.5 million per season until 26-27, which is a long time, just as long as Josh Anderson's contract, Gallagher's contract presents a significant issue. And it's unfortunate because obviously Gallagher was one of the best value players in the NHL for a while, and he's a hardworking player. No one will ever suggest he wasn't a crucial part, but the unfortunate reality is the NHL is a business, and sometimes harsh decisions must be made. Now, my first question when I read this was, who is going to trade for Gallagher? Now, they mentioned in the article that teams aren't exactly lining up for Brendan Gallagher's talents, trying to say, oh yes, bring him here. And the big problem is the cap hit and the term, right? Brendan Gallagher's in a very weird situation. You know, while we look at the Montreal Canadiens roster and we think of some other guys that might be used as trade bait, someone like a Josh Anderson who has a contract that's just as long, he's making a little bit less money, but he's also actively contributing and is about a 20-goal scorer when he's healthy and playing at the level that he's able to play at, right? So someone like Brendan Gallagher, though, who is playing like 40, 50 games a season, constantly has lingering injuries. His body is just really, unfortunately, starting to betray him, right? He's got some lower body issues, some upper body issues. And I mean, I love Brendan Gallagher. I think all of us love Brendan Gallagher. But at what point do you cut your losses? Does that happen sooner than later? He's such a great leader, and a lot of people thought he was going to be the next captain of the Montreal Canadiens before Nick Suzuki was named captain. He's definitely getting an A, and that A is going to be on his chest however long he's playing for the Montreal Canadiens. But if you can find a way to dump his contract somewhere else, do you do it? If he doesn't go on LTIR, I don't see another team taking his contract, right? So if you're the Montreal Canadiens, it's a tough situation. I don't think a buyout is within the realm of possibility, not with the cap space that Montreal has now, and they want to keep that flexibility as they start to enter their contention window within the next few years. So maybe you look around, maybe you shop him. I don't know. What do you guys think about Brendan Gallagher? Because it's a situation with no clear answer. There's no clear path forward for the Montreal Canadiens here. So I want to hear from you, because for me, I honestly don't even really know what you do with him. But let's move on to something a little more lighter, right? He's got a not so great contract. Let's move on to some of the better contracts on the team. And there was a nice article posted today as well, looking at some of the better bargain contracts in the Habs. This is posted by A Winning Habit. And, well, let's take a look at number one. Well, no, sorry, not the Gallagher thing. They talk about Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach making $3.3 million. He signed a 4-year contract with a cap of $3.3 million per year, which seemed risky at the time, but that was just a year ago. The thing with Kirby Dach is that we already saw him produce at, like, what is a very, very solid level, right? He came over from Chicago, and a lot of the things that people had to say about him in Chicago as, like, negative things, for example, his physicality, and his, sort of inability to produce points while on good lines, playing with good players, those things were just not the case in Montreal. He comes to Montreal, he plays with Caufield, he plays with Nick Suzuki, and he puts up insane totals, like almost point per game level totals while those three were together. And he also started using his body more. He's a big frame, right? He's 6'3", 6'4", and he learned how to use it when he came to Montreal. And that contract, again, was seen as a bit risky, right? You trade for a guy, same thing as this Newhook thing this year, right? You trade for a guy, you give up some assets, some picks, some prospects, and you're like, all right, well, we're going to sign you to an extension. We're going to buy this RFA time. We're just going to see what you can do. And boy, has Kirby already exceeded expectations. I see no way that he declines next year at all, right? I think Kirby Dach is just such a phenomenal player. And that cap it at 3.3, I think even this year, we're going to look at that as one of the biggest steals on the Habs. And if the Habs can enter their contention window within the next 2 to 3 while Kirby is on this contract, I think that would be absolutely ideal. Now, we also got Jordan Harris. And Jordan Harris is, in my opinion, the most underrated contract on the team. Just this past year, he signed a 2-year deal, right? 2-year contract extension worth $1.4 million each year, and he's barely earning more than he did on his entry level. But if you guys are familiar with these underlying statistics, a lot of the advanced stats surrounding Jordan Harris, He was statistically the Habs' best rookie defenseman last year, even better than Kaiden Guhle in a lot of metrics. He was just so solid. He was solid offensively, solid defensively, very few mistakes, and performed at like about a second pairing level in the NHL, even though he wasn't always getting those kind of minutes. He's one of those quiet players, one of those guys that you don't say his name very often. He doesn't have a ton of exciting plays, but the thing is, when you're not saying a rookie defenseman's name very often, that can actually be quite a good thing, right? His decision-making in his own zone especially, while definitely isn't like elite level, was quite good for a guy with as little experience as he has. And you could just always rely on him in almost any situation. I think that's what makes him so valuable. Those kind of defensemen that can eat 15, 20 minutes a night if you need them to, while rarely making mistakes, are not a dime a dozen in the NHL, right? And especially ones that are only making $1.4 million per year. So while it is only a 2-year contract, I think it's a really big bargain. I wanted to also mention, they mentioned Sean Monahan in the article. I didn't really bring up a picture for this because we all kind of know Sean Monahan. If he produces at the level he did when he was healthy, his deal's a bargain, right? These one-year deals for not a very high cap hit, like $2 million, under $2 million. It's like, you know, if he's healthy, that's good. The thing with Monahan is I find it hard to say it'll definitely be a bargain without seeing his health, but thought I'd mention it anyway. But yeah, some really good deals that Kent Hughes has made so far. But now let's get into the meat of this video, the interesting part. Let's talk about William Nylander. And William Nylander and the Habs have been linked, whether we like it or not, for a while now. And, you know, some Habs fans saying, let's just sign him if the Leafs don't give him an extension, right? Of course, the Leafs extended Austin Matthews. They're in a bit of a cap crunch, but William Nylander. So could Montreal trade for him is the big question, right? And I think a lot of Habs fans are saying, well, why would we trade for him? There's a bunch of things going on. But in a recent podcast appearance, Michael Tracos, a Leafs reporter, answered a question from one of the people on the podcast asking about the possibility to have a trio of Nick Suzuki, Cole Caufield, and William Nylander. And before I sort of get into what he said, that is a sick trio, even though Nylander's a Leaf, of course. But anyway, they said, in the case of a trade, the Habs wouldn't like the return, basically. He believes that the names of Caufield, Slafkovsky, and Guhle would be in the discussions. And more is that the Habs don't really need the services of Nylander. But yeah, Tracos is a Maple Leafs reporter for the National Post, but he kind of looks around the league. So this is very interesting. William Nylander's trade price. Now, I don't know. I tried listening to this as well on the TVA Sports podcast, I think Canadiens Connection. And while I also wanted to say that Lego Rocks 99 posted a video about this earlier. This is where I heard about this first, so got to give credit where credit's due. But William Nylander to the Habs. If the trade price is any of those guys, I don't think I do it, right? I think if you're Montreal and you're looking at William Nylander, like in a vacuum, yes, William Nylander's a 40-goal scorer, and he's an excellent player who's going to be getting paid a lot of money. But I just don't think you can give up on Slafkovsky or Caufield, especially at this point in the rebuild, right? Like William Nylander does not fit the timeline nearly as well as these other guys. And I know myself, right? I come onto this channel a lot of the time and say, fitting the timeline is important, but not as important as people think. You still need these older superstars, or at least stars like 33, 32-year-old vets on these cup-winning teams that are still producing in order to win a cup often. But at the same time, to give up your prized assets just to get him in the first place, I just don't see a world where Montreal does this. Like, Kaiden Guhle is considered probably going to be one of their first pairing D-men of the future, which is incredibly valuable to any team that wants to contend. Slafkovsky was the first overall pick. He's like 19 years old. We've not even seen even close to what he's capable of. And Cole Caufield is going to end up having better goals per game than William Nylander over his career, and you can mark that down right now. I just don't see how this makes any sense for Montreal. So, I mean, already, I think I was against a Montreal for William Nylander trade, but to hear the asking price that a Toronto Maple Leafs reporter has said that the Leafs would want for William Nylander, it's just completely absurd to me. Let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of you guys are going to say, you're going to agree with me. You're going to say there's no way Nylander should come to Montreal in the first place, let alone if that is the asking price. So for me, this is a hard pass, just a completely insane take that I felt like I needed to share with you guys. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subs. We really appreciate your support. I've been Josh Gosse. Catch you in the next one.